here. Why don't you tell my listeners what you had for breakfast this morning?
Well, I ate some bread like I usually do. Sometimes I sometimes I eat porridge, but today it was bread.
Just some bread? Anything on
Yep.
that bread? Anything fancy? Just some butter and bread? No coffee?
Butter, cheese, and tomatoes.
Nice. See, that's fancy toast. That's not just bread. Awesome. Well, I think we're sounding good here, so why don't we go ahead and jump into it. So why don't you start by telling my listeners what you're currently raising money for over on Kickstarter?
So yeah, I'm Sami Laakso from Snowdale Design, and I'm collecting funds for Dale of Merton's collection, which is the third game in the series. They're all standalone games, and this is the third one, and it also includes a large box that you can store the whole series inside it.
Very nice, very nice. So you said this is the third set of this game, the Dale of Merton's games? It's a whole collection series, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So far there have been Dale of Merton's, the original Dale of Merton's, Dale of Merton's 2, and Dale of Merton's collection, which is now the third one in the series.
Nice. And were those other campaigns also funded on Kickstarter, or did you do those a different way?
Yeah, those both have been funded on Kickstarter as well.
Okay.
A few years ago.
Okay. What's the timeline between the games? When was the first game published?
It was like about 3 years ago, and the second one was about 2 years ago, and now we're ready for the third one, because there was a longer gap between this and the second one, because there was a new game, Dawn of Peacemakers, that I crowdfunded and released at that time, which is right now on the boats and should be released in a month or two.
Nice. So when you kind of first started this series of games, did you have the vision that this was going to be a 3-parter, or maybe even, is it more? Is it going to be a 5-parter? Like, is this the last of the of this sort of series of games, or did you have that in your mind that you were going to do multiple campaigns like this?
Absolutely not. The first game I did just for fun, so I could play my game that I had designed myself with my closest friends and family. That was all that there was to it. But people enjoyed my friends' success. That maybe you should release it, or ask some publishers if they want to do it. And here we are now.
That's cool.
This is not the last one in the series. There will be at least a fourth one in the series as well, and the big box will have enough room to store that as well inside it.
That's great. So what do you look for, I guess, when you're kind of working on a game like this, that, or what kind of started to kind of come up that you're like, you know what, we need to do multiple versions of this game. There's more to it. Like what did you start to see from the first version that made you want to make more of this?
So Dale of Merchants is a deck building game, and each game comes with a bunch of smaller decks, and each of those decks are designed and themed around a single animal. So for example, there are thieving northern raccoons who steal cards from other players, and then there are slots who are so slow that when you play a card for them, it actually gets resolved at the start of your next turn, as they're so slow. And you only use a few of those decks in each individual game. So there's a huge amount of variety based on which decks you include, and I always come up with new ideas for new decks. And that's why there's so many games in the series, because I always come up with new decks that are awesome to go and combine with the previous ones in the series.
Sure. How do you keep all of that gameplay organized across multiple decks so that there isn't a fall off, or there isn't like, oh, we use this one deck, it doesn't actually work very well with, game 3 or whatever it might be, deck 3 or whatever. How do you keep all of that organized? Is it notes, or is it just, being a good game designer? How do you put all that together to make sure all this stuff plays nicely together?
At first, I did it mostly just how I felt that should be appropriate for each card and each deck. But the more I have created the decks, the longer list of so-called guidelines or golden rules or whatever you want to call them, I have for each deck and each card. That's what I want the decks to feel like, what I want it to achieve when included in the game, and what the individual card can do, what an individual card should do, and of course what they can't do and what they shouldn't do,
Right.
and all kinds of that. And for example, if a card is a nasty one that can be used to steal cards from other players, then that deck should have multiple cards of things of that sort. So there's not only one card that can be used to steal cards. There should be a bunch in a deck. But some decks provide a lot of nasty interaction, and some provide none at all. But there are no decks that provide just a tiny bit, because then only it can be that only one player gets access for those cards. So it should be that all players get access to the nasty cards, or no players get access to those kinds of cards.
And where did you learn like game design like this? Where did you pick up this skill set to build games like this?
Well, something that helps is that I have played games all my life, and that certainly helps a ton. And being a critical thinker helps as well. And just by trying it out. So this is not the first game I designed, but this is the first game that I designed in a mindset that I want this to be a great one. So before that, they were just some funny thought exercises mostly. But if you use plenty of time and write your methods down and play test a ton, that helps. That helps greatly.
Is there sort of is there like a mentor or like a type of design that you play like? Is there other people like what you do in terms of like, you know, I sound like this guy in the music industry, so he's like, oh, I kind of sound like this or this, these two bands together. Is that same thing sort of for game design? Like I'm in the style of these 2 or 3 games.
I'm not sure if there are any individual. It's like maybe a combination of multiple. So I like to create games that have a great theme in it. So the theme must support the mechanism, because that makes it easier to learn the game, easier to teach the game to players. So that's one of the things that I like to do. And other one is that I like to create games that have really simple and elegant rules, but a lot of depth between the interaction of those rules. So the complexity shouldn't come from the rules, it should come from combining different parts while you play the game. So it's easy to jump in, but there's a lot of depth once you are in the game.
That's cool. How many players for this type of game that you have here for Dale of Merchants? Is it 4 players, 2 player?
Dale of Merchants is for 2 to 4 players, so 2, 3, or 4 players, and there's a team rules as well for the 4 players. So you can either play competitively, each for themselves, or 2 versus 2 when you're combining forces with another player.
That's cool. That's very awesome. So when you start, I mean, I guess this would be for like the person who's just kind of maybe thinking about getting into game design and stuff. What is the first step? I mean, what is like, all right, I've got this in my brain. I think it would work. What do you start to put together a game like this?
If you haven't designed any games earlier, then I would suggest maybe trying some house rules or variants, or designing small expansions for your favorite games, just to get an idea what it's like without having to use without having to use that much time in it. And then if you feel like the game design is something that you really like, then you should start with a smaller project. So like, for example, I started with Dale of Merchants, which is a kind of small a card game, and only after that I suggest that you might want to jump in a heavier, larger game with more components and higher price point and things like that.
Sure. And do you like recommend starting off with, you know, like just a simple like print version of something, or just so that you can actually play it with somebody to get some feedback? And if so, how long is that sort of time frame does it take you to kind of put a game together, in terms of like, I got an idea, it's on a napkin, I've sketched it out, to I've got, you know, we've played tested it. You know, how long is that process usually take?
certainly recommend getting the game on the table as soon as possible. You can ponder around and think about the rules for the game as long as you want, but it will never be ready until you have actually played the game. Mm-hmm. And you will figure out things that don't work with your design or your idea way sooner if you just get it table as soon as possible and to try things out. And for the time schedule, it of course depends a lot what kind of game you're talking about and how much time you're able to design and play test it. Sure. If you, for example, have a full-time job and so forth. So, for example, for me, creating one medium to large-size game takes about a year, including design, development, play testing, illustrating, publishing, all of that. So it's a huge time sink, and I'm doing it full time. If you're doing it on the side of your other job, and maybe you have family and stuff like that, so it will take a lot longer at that point.
And for this, how many people are on your team in terms of like, are you doing the illustrations, or what are you working on particularly, as opposed to maybe some of the stuff that you've either outsourced or are having partners on?
Yeah, so I'm the only guy full time at my company, Snownail Design, and I do the design, development, playtesting with other players, other people, of course, and illustrating and publishing. I do have help for playtesting, as I mentioned, and then I have help for some of the story and flavor of my game, of my different games. All my games are set in the same world so far, the so-called world of Animal Folks, Daymuria, and I have a lot of help from different people who have been fleshing out the world and the different animals that inhabit it.
Hmm. What sort of has been maybe like the biggest roadblock over the last few years of you making games? Has there been something that you just couldn't do, or it just was out of the reach of where you were as a business yet? What's been like the biggest roadblock?
I'm not sure if I have had any significant roadblocks. Something that I can thank that for is that I have read a lot about the industry and crowdfunding online. For example, Steini Stegmaier has an excellent Kickstarter blog on his website, and I started small with Tale of Merchants, and then I have been slowly growing up the complexity and at the same time the price point of some of my games. So I've been lucky, and I have been investigating and reading a lot about the industry, so I have been able to avoid most of the big roadblocks.
That's great. And my follow-up question to that would be, what has been something that's happened that you just really knew you had something? What was the moment where it just all felt like, you know what, I need to go deeper down this. I need to make 3 versions of Tale of Merchants. What was like the moment where you were like, this is really happening?
Well, the first moment was when I played the game with my friends, and they said, this is awesome. I think people would enjoy that. That was their first step in starting the business. Then the second one was that when the first Kickstarter get funded pretty easily, and as it was my first one, that was a really huge step. And sure. Then the second crowdfunding campaign got funded in less than 10 hours or something like that. That was the point that I pretty much moved fully to creating board games. Until that point, I was also juggling between board games and my main job at the same time, and that was the main tipping point.
That's great. What was sort of the metrics you were looking at to jump into doing this full time? I mean, was there just a moment where you're like, I can obviously afford this to work full time at my own company here. I can continue to make games, but how did you make that leap into to leaving your job to do this full time?
As you said, it's mostly when I can afford to do so. So that, of course, before that I thought about if I want to do it. And when the answer is that I like this more and I like my current day job, then I try to make it possible. And once the Kickstarter campaign for the Day of Merchants 2 was as successful as it was, then I was able to make the leap.
That's cool. That's awesome. And where are you located right now?
In Finland.
Okay. What's the gaming scene like there? Is it a big, strong community? Is there pockets of people? What's the industry like for games there?
I would say it's pretty strong, and it's of course it pretty much pockets of people around the country. And one of the big and good things for myself is that people in Finland can speak and at least read English pretty well. Mm-hmm. And we don't have pretty much none of the big hobby games are released in Finnish. So we play all our games in English. So that makes it possible for me to have one version of my games that I can sell internationally and here in Finland, because people are used to purchasing hobby games in English.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like, I guess just, do you travel all over Europe to play this at all? Do you travel and show it off, or how do you get people to kind of play test it in your area? Is it just friends and family, or do you have like a pocket of people that you know are mentors, or you trust their opinion? They're not just saying, "Oh no, it's great," just to say it. Like, they're really giving you solid feedback. Like, how did you cultivate and find that community?
I mostly play test and with the local friends and people here in my city, mm-hmm. and then I really trust their feedback, and I trust myself to know if this is any good or not. And I do travel around Finland to show off the game, and once a year I attend the Essen Spiel where I show up my new games as well. And that's mostly the advertising that I do myself. I don't have time to go internationally to multiple conventions a year, because I need to design and develop and playtest and sure. all that jazz. I don't have time to run around to different conventions all the time.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's flip over to the actual Kickstarter campaign, which is why we're talking today. So this is your third campaign, you said, correct? Is it third or fourth? Yeah. Third one?
This is the fourth campaign and third in the same series.
In the series, right. And, we're talking right now, and you've got 24 days to go. You've got, and I'm looking at in US dollars here, but you've absolutely crushed your goal here. For us, you're sitting at $76,000 with, over 1,100 backers, which is amazing. That's a lot of people wanting to play this game. So, because you've done this before, what was the strategy for this particular campaign in terms of pre-launch, and what did you do to get ready to announce this project?
Well, first of all, I made sure that the game is as good as it can be before the campaign. There are mostly just illustrating left for certain parts of the game, but I made sure that the game is developed, fully play-tested, and the rules are available. And I have also illustrated most of the stuff that I show on the campaign page, so it looks professional and nice. There are a lot of stuff that are incomplete, but I don't show those parts because they're not relevant. They're mostly duplicates of the stuff that there already is. And I also reach to people that I know like the series earlier, and then I send prototype versions for them so they can cover the game. And one of the most critical things is email newsletter. So I have people who like my stuff subscribe to my email newsletter. So the first thing after I launch the campaign is I send out the newsletter to those people, letting them know that now there's more stuff to the series that you already know and love. Mm-hmm. So I get the big burst at the first hour of the campaign from people who are coming back to the series.
That's great. That's great. And was there any sort of, outside of like designing the game, just sort of metrics in general, was there any sort of metrics you were looking at in terms of making sure that you got a big burst on the first day? I mean, did you know your newsletter was going to produce certain things, or was it Facebook ads, or was there any sort of, I wanted to get this many new email addresses for this particular part, or were you just banking on the success of the past two games?
Mostly the past games, and during each of those campaigns, I have gathered more and more email subscribers, and even between campaigns, I have a form on my online page web page where people can subscribe to the newsletter.
Mhm.
And one small thing, or I should mention at least two. The first one was that I started a development diary a few weeks before the campaign launch on Board Game Geek, where I tell about designing the game and introduce new and tell about the new stuff that I introduce in the game. And of course, once the campaign goes live, I will tell them that now it's live, you can go and back the game. And another thing is that there are a ton of different animals in the game, and I came up with an idea where people can suggest new animals to the game from their favorites, which they like. And I opened a voting system where people can suggest their ideas, and that was also a few weeks before the campaign, so I got some talking going on about the game. And now during the campaign, the first thing was that they success their animals, and now I have a ton of new animals listed, and I will pick 10 of those and for 3 different polls that I will run during the campaign, and people can then vote. And I promise that I will include the animals with the most votes into the game, and that's one way for me also to generate interest from people for the game, because that's one way. It's important that people can feel part of the process, and they can give input to the project creator.
Well, I think that's what I mean. I think board games do this the best out of any category right now on Kickstarter in terms of giving opportunities for the crowd to basically participate in the project somehow. Did you have that going in? Is that always something in your mind where you're like, you kind of knew, I'm going to get great feedback, I'm going to do these polls, I'm going to get people to give me suggestions? Did you kind of always know that was going to be something that you would do?
I certainly didn't have that all the time, but I knew that I wanted some way for people to get excited and get involved in the campaign. And when I did invent or came up with the idea of people suggesting new animals, which they have already done before this in randomly in forums and social media, where they say, hey, did you have these animals? I really like this. And then I thought that if they're doing that without me asking, how much will they do if I actually ask about those opinions from people? Right. So that was the main thing that get me invent this new system for Delft Merchants Collection.
That's cool. Now, are you focused a lot on social media, or are you more, since you're in the board game world, more focused on like the forums, Board Game, Reddit, or BoardGameGeek.com and Reddit, or are you still looking at Facebook, Instagram, and those tools?
I personally use mostly Board Game Geek and a little bit of Twitter, but that's pretty much it. I think that some of the authors are pretty much waste of time. Yeah. They can gather interest from people and stuff like that, but it's so much of your time if you try to concentrate on all of the social media out there.
And are you, like, do you particularly, how much social media do you do for your game off of when you're not running an active campaign? I mean, is it something that you're always producing content around it, or do you do like a big push around the Kickstarter and then you kind of die down a little bit and then, go back and forth?
Pretty much the latter. I do a big push during before and during campaigns, and then I pretty much live low on between sometimes posting a little bit stuff, but not that much, because it takes so much time to actually do the games that I just leave the social media.
That's great.
On back burner when I'm actually doing the game, creating the games.
Yeah, you got to make the game. You got to make a great product. So with 24 days to go in the campaign, what are you doing to just kind of keep momentum going, just to make sure that you're not getting, a big trough or a lot of days without backers? But what are you doing just to keep that momentum going and just to keep all the energy up?
Well, as you can see, I'm taking part of these amazing interviews.
Yeah, outside of this one, what are the other things you might be doing?
As I already mentioned, the voting polls, there will be one new one new bird to the game, one new mammal, and one new reptile, and those will be 3 different voting polls, which each of them will last for 1 week. And first of those polls will start actually tomorrow, and that's one way to have always new and fresh things for people to vote on during the campaign. Mm-hmm. And there's the different decks that I already mentioned shortly before. This game will come with 8 new decks, and I'm slowly introducing those during the campaign to people so they can get excited about that. And I always ask which deck they actually want to hear about next, so I haven't set in stone which order I introduce them. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the things, and also there are new previews coming up even during the campaign. So the biggest previews are already up, and they were pretty much the day one. But then there are smaller ones popping up during the campaign.
That's cool. And are you actively trying to get reviewers or influencers in the game world to play this right now, or is that something you did in pre-launch?
That was pretty much pre-launch, because it's a good habit to give the previews, people who preview the games, at least a few weeks, if any way possible. A full month would be nice to have them time to play the game before they have to do their content. Right.
So after the campaign ends and it takes whatever Kickstarter 10 days or so to put the money in the pocket, what starts the process? What happens after that point?
After the campaign, I will also start. I spend way less time on the campaign and on social media and stuff like that, so I have more time to actually finish up the game. So the main thing is that I will have to illustrate a lot, because there are 55 individual character cards, which is a new thing in the Delve Merchants collection. Those are kind of like unique player powers that people will start the game with, and each of those will have a unique illustration, and I have not done most of them just yet. So I will mostly start illustrating a whole lot.
Yeah, right. And what about shipping and manufacturing? Is that stuff kind of already set in stone because you've done this before, or is that something you're still kind of working through?
I have the manufacturer and fulfillment center, all of that already ready, and just waiting for me to send files to the factory, and then they'll start printing the game, and then I already know which fulfillment centers will handle the shipping, and all of that have already been planned and contacted them.
That's great.
Way ahead of time.
That's great. Well, Sammy, where can people learn more about your games and dive into your world and just kind of take everything that you're doing in?
I have an active website, snowdaledesign.fi, and there you can find links to a ton of stuff all around the online world. So there are links to tens and tens of dozens of previews and reviews of different games, and there are links to the different development diaries that I have written on Board Game Geek and all of that. So it's a kind of hub where you can find links to pretty much everything that I have done around the games.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, everybody out there, I hope everybody goes and checks out Dale of Merchants collection over on Kickstarter now. You've got about 24 days to go here. Probably when I put this up, you'll have about 20 days to go. So I encourage everybody to go check it out. Sammy, this is awesome. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, and I wish you a lot of luck in the future, man. Keep going. Keep making games. This is awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. That's a great one. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.